It would take many more trips to Asia before it became clear to JB3 what the Taiwanese furniture maker meant. During that time, two events helped ensure China would indeed get on top: China's admission into the WTO and the great exodus of 160 million rural Chinese to the cities, the largest migration in human history. It would take the $100 dresser and getting eyeball to eyeball with the man behind it before JB3 fully understood the battle he was about to enter. The rules of war had changed, drastically, and cowboy capitalism seemed to be the only rule of international trade. It was cold inside the factory where Bassett finally met with businessman and Communist Party official He Yunfeng in northern China in November 2002. The worker's breath froze in little puffs of vapor. The Chinese furniture magnate looked him in the damn eye, Bassett recalled. Then he said something that raised the hair on the back of the Virginian's neck. He Yunfeng would be happy to provide Bassett with the dressers at a fraction of what they cost to make, a feat Bassett knew would not be possible without Chinese government subsidies. All Bassett had to do in return, He Yunfeng said, was close his own factories. Close his factories? John Bassett pictured the whole lot of his hard-charging forebears turning en masse in their graves. He thought of his 1,730 workers, plain-spoken mountain types, many of whom had followed their parents and grandparents into the factories, standing in unemployment lines instead of assembly lines. He thought of the smokestacks that for a century had borne his family's name and of the legacy he wanted to leave his kids. Back at home, he felt alone in the industry, with only his two sons and his scrappy little factories. He was the last American furniture maker willing to raise hell about what was happening. If he could prove the Chinese were selling the product below the cost of the materials, if he could prove their factories were buoyed by communist government subsidies in an illegal price dump designed to drive American companies out of business, then his company just might survive. If he could convince a majority of his industry to join him in persuading the U.S. Department of Commerce and the U.S. International Trade Commission of the truth, maybe the entire industry could be saved. But those were big ifs, with potentially huge pitfalls. Surely he would be scorned by both his longtime customers and his competitors. He'd be ridiculed by the handful of families that had ruled the $50 billion industry, as well as some members of his own family, who were too busy closing down factories and cashing their checks to protect their furniture-making legacy. He'd be ostracized for trying to stop the flood of furniture jobs from America, for striking back against the 1%ers who were about to move damn near all their plants to Asia and tear the heart out of the Blue Ridge region he loved. From the taverns of Virginia to the halls of power in Washington, D.C., from the factory floor to the back roads of Liaoning, China, where he would uncover a great lie at the heart of globalization, John Bassett was going to war. Part 1. 1. The tip-off. What were all them little people doing at work today? Bassett Furniture line worker on the presence of Taiwanese factory managers. Once in a reporter's career, if one is very lucky, a person like John D. Bassett III comes along. JB3 is inspirational. He's brash. He's a sawdust-covered good old boy from rural Virginia, a larger-than-life rule-breaker who for more than a decade has stood almost single-handedly against the outflow of furniture jobs from America. He's an asshole, more than one of his competitors barked when they heard I was writing a book about globalization with JB3 as a main character. Over the course of researching this book, over the course of hearing his many lectures and listening to him evade my questions by telling me the same stories over and over, there were times that I agreed. I first heard about him in Rocky Mount, Virginia, about half an hour from my home in Roanoke, while eating breakfast with my neighbor and good friend Joel Shepard. Joel owns Virginia Furniture Market, a Rocky Mount retail establishment that began thriving at the same time the import boom hit. Right now, as I type, I'm sitting in a Paisley recliner that my husband and I still fight.